As you can see, this is written in Portuguese. I think for Romanians it's easy to get the architecture of the martyrs, the legends of São Torpes, which is the Portuguese name, but perhaps the French name is more usual to use, São Torpes. That's the same name, São Torpes, São Torpes. A structural analysis of 8th century manuscript called the Passio Sancti Torpes, well, in several stages. I am using mainly 3 authors for my framework. For the historical framework, I'm using Peter Brown, the famous British historian who created the concept of late antiquity, which means that against the Illuministic, the Enlightenment idea that there was the fall of the Roman Empire and then very only trouble, only dark times, and somewhat mysteriously emerged Middle Age, Peter Brown established there is a late antiquity from the 5th to the 8th century, what mostly happened is what he calls, there came the friends of God. And who are the friends of God? They are martyrs, they are bishops, there are new institutions, and there is a new community between peoples, perhaps with more economical inequality, but also with more social assistance, on account of what? On account of the gospel, on account of Christianity. So Christianity is not a down from an empire. Christianity is a rebirth of some cities at the expense of others. Of course, the imperial center of Rome went down, but new cities, even small, arose with around churches, basilicas, and monasteries, and such should be the case. My second set of authors are the very well-known Jesuit fathers Bollandistes, the Jean Bolland, those who made the critique since the 17th century of these martyrs' legends. And mainly for this period, I'm using Father Delegue 1920 book about Les Légendes des Martyrs, the martyrs' legends, where he has a very good principle. Before Nicaea, before the Council of Nicaea, which we just commemorated last year, legends were okay. They have a very strong historical evidence. St. Peter, St. Paul, St. Andrew was here. Well, he was somewhere in the Black Sea for sure. After Nicaea, the so-called post-Nicene legends, Delegue, the Jesuit father, said, oh, that's literature. That's almost it. So, you are going to see a legend that is mostly literature, but the hermeneutical question is this. Okay, this is not history. This is literature. But why this literature? Why did they felt the necessity to write this? What was the circumstances and what they said? Finally, my third order and school of thought are the so-called structuralists au visage humain, structuralists but with a human face. Bruno Latour, which you know I enjoy very much, Michel Serres, René Girard, because they say this: there is no pure human action. Action is always between people and things, subjects and objects. Well, perhaps in paradise, the love acts of Adam and Eve were only among people, but not yet, because they got something, Eva got something for her, and then came an angel, and then there is God itself. So, there is no pure human action. And that translates into a kind of analysis which is called ANT, Action Network Theory. You can only make a theory about human agency if you see that we are not acting only on a human basis, but with things, with objects, with entities, with angels, for instance, as you see here. And that's why the described events are a bit, we may say from an Enlightenment point of view, mythical, fabulous, impossible. But from another point of view, those are symbols that pretend to describe agency between human and human. So that's it, and let's go in a short recap. This is still Portuguese, but the important Saint Torpes or Saint-Tropez was a confrontation between the Emperor Nero and a functionary of the Roman court, of Nero himself. And it happened around 64 after Christ. So, I'm not going to tell it to you, but the first part of the legend is that Emperor Nero was at the city of Pisa. Then Saint Torpes, or Saint-Tropez, became a Christian, became baptized. He was baptized in the mountain by an eremit called Antonio between Pisa and Lucca. Then he suffered a martyrium, a prolonged one. There is a pattern for those descriptions. And then becomes the important part for us, Christians and Portuguese, because he came to a port, an harbor in Portugal, Porto Sinos, which exists, Sines. And there was the foundation of a church, a Paleo-Christian basilica, of which there are the foundations, and there some people went afterwards to make a testimony. Now some chronology. This legend, as I said, is from the 8th century, 1750 after Christ, more here, less here. But the Sines, the Portuguese Paleo-Christian Basilica, is from 100 years before, 650. So, what does happen? It happens that always with post-descent legends that there was always an intense commerce of the Mediterranean with the Atlantic coast of Portugal, Galicia, and France, and England. Some authors call the Mediterranean the Sea of the Saints, because there are a lot of stories about saints who go in embarkations from one point, from Italy, or for instance, you have in the Eastern Church, Saint Nicholas. You also have a nautical voyage. Or you have Saint Vincent of Saragossa, who had a nautical voyage, and so on, and so on. Others came from Carthage, Saint Marcel from Carthage, from Africa. St. Torpes may be a saint coming from Africa, the Africa of the early Christianization. Actually, there is a basilica with this name in Carthage, of Celerina. So, there are a lot of unknowns in this history, and there are some knowns. And that someone was saying, and knowns and knowns and knowns and so on and so on. This is a recapitulation. So, the legend, it's about the confrontation of the Holy Ghost with the political power. Nero wanted to build a huge pagan temple dedicated to Diana, which, by the way, is not true at all, because Nero didn't enjoy any god, neither goddess at all, and only Diana, but pardon me because of what I'm going to say, but it's true, it comes in the Roman history. He made some, kind of what Trump supposedly did in Moscow with prostitutes, you know that. Well, so Nero did that with the goddess Diana. So he was a very atheistic, violent, and narcissistic personality, as you know. And after burning Rome, he put the blame on the Christians, and that's it. That is the baptism again. Another actant appears, Antonius the Eremite, baptized Torpes, the court functionary. Then there is a woman. That is very important, because in Roman history, what Roman woman really has a status? There was never an empress as a political task. Okay, they manipulated, they made important, but they went on. So the church in Portugal was founded by a woman, Salarina, and that there is the scribe, the one who gives us a testimony. Again, we don't go to this again. This is a sketch of the description of Nero's palace. Everything is fake, a fake sky, a fake water falling, a fake planets and stars, so on. And what is important, that there was, we accelerate the story, and the story is about the collapse of paganism, which was not immediate, not at all. It was by phases, by stages, but they are able to defeat the imperial force, and prayer is the most important thing to oppose to power. So the legend of St. Torpes is the story of prayer against power, and at the end, prayer at some, we go on with this. Prayer apparently.
Yeah. No, it's fine. Because I saw something.
Slide anteriores.
No.
Já, para trás. We are here.
No.
Here? No. I do it. We were here. Thank you, Suceava. We were here saying that the collapse of paganism in its, and the collapse of the imperial force through the intervention of prayer. That was what I said. So this is full of symbolisms. The legend was, again, written, anonymously written, at around 1750, 1760, perhaps in Pisa, perhaps in Lucca, certainly Italy, on occasion of the end of the Lombard kingdom of Italy and the Carolingian invasion. So the writer most probably was someone unhappy with the hand of the Lombard kingdom, and he was saying something like this: okay, our kingdom Christian is finished, came the emperor, Charles the Great, Carolus Magnus, but we gave something out of our land. We gave something to Hispania, to Portugal. There was no name Portugal at that time. It was Hispania. So, this is just a matrix. I will put it in English. It will take me some 5 minutes, and I will send you to you that. But this is a matrix with the dimensions, the delusion of Nero, the will of God, and so on and so on. And that is the important moment of the decapitation. St. Torpes was decapitated when the river Arno, the river who comes from Florence, you all know Florence, you know that's kind of Italy. Firenze, Prato, Pistoia, Lucca, Pisa, and then the sea, the harbor, where, according to tradition, Saint Peter came from Jerusalem to Rome. So he came by boat, of course. The Mediterranean is the sea of the saints, and Saint Peter debarked here. San Piero al Gravo. Roxana knows very well Italian. San Piero al Gravo, where the river Arno comes to the Mediterranean Sea. So this may be symbolic for Torpes, but it's almost surely historical for St. Peter and for St. Paul. And what happened? You see, human agency is not completed, accomplished only through humans. You see a cock, and you see a dog, and you see a body, and you should not have the head, because the head was severed. Say this, what I'm doing. I'm walking with a machine which has memory, intelligence, and some sort of will. In a sense,
Some sort of will.
I'm walking with my hand on my hands, just like the martyrs, in a sense. We are walking with our head in our hands. So did St. Torpes. He walked with his head, then his head went to the sea. And then comes the interesting part for every Portuguese. Boats, navigations, discoveries, Vasco da Gama, all of that things. He made a fabulous trip. He went from Pisa, this should be the other direction, to Portocinos in Hispania, which is actually Portugal. If you Google Sines, is the biggest harbor in Portugal. I think it's almost as big as Constance or Galati because it's huge. It comes all ships from America, from Africa, and so on, and refineries. It's a very important point. From 50 years ago, before it was just a fisherman's village. The point is that another non-human actant guided the boat. Angels, we are not, as the Invictus film movie says, we are not the masters of our souls. There are other masters to our souls than ourselves. So the angel guided the boat. And when he came to the shores of Sines, as in the Gospel, some kind of this, the cock made his chant. The woman who problems, according to my research, was a Christian nun, because perhaps there was a Christian basilica there. And she was very rich. There is also economical and sociological point. Women had a lot of money and they founded the monasticism was both masculine and feminine, and if they have money, they could found very important churches and monasteries, as that was the case. And so, finishing, I'm finishing. So goes the legend. 50 years after this event, there was someone called Artemio who came to Portugal, who prayed at the tomb and said, "Oh, but this is Torpes. I knew you. I am also a Roman. You here in Portugal should know everything that happens." You see the literary construction? And he dictated the events to a scribe called Audax. Perhaps all of this, on my account, are symbolic names. Audax, Fortuna, Audaxex, Juvat. Artemius, it's the masculine name contrary to Artemisia, Diane, and so on and so on. This is a literary construction. It's fabulous. But the point is, why did he make that? Well, that is the important hermeneutic point. And so, this is the end of it. Geography was the subject of this final slide. Geography, the description of the martyrs and of the saints is this issue. And you in Romanian very easily can see this. Glory to Christ that gave such a grace to those who revere him and rescued this saint from the high, this is very important, from ISIS. So this is not a Mediterranean trip. ISIS is Atlantic. All that invocate Christ in the sea are liberated from the help, from danger with the help of the Lord. So this is the last part of the story of the legend. And some Torpes, and you know, Portugal became the country of the navigators. Vasco da Gama was born in Sines. You see the coincidence. Vasco da Gama was born here in Sines, and then he went to India, and so on and so on. Thank you.